afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Droidcon Italy webinar. My name is Lucy James. I'm one of the Droidcon organisers. I'm very pleased to be with you this afternoon. Today, you'll be hearing from Annyce and Wesnie on landing your next gig. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
How are you, Lucy?
How are you today?
Good.
Good.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having us.
Absolute pleasure. I'm very excited to hear what all of your tips are going to be on landing a next gig and all of the recruitment ideas that you guys have. So that's exciting. For everybody that's listening, you'll be able to post questions to Annyce and Wesnie using the chat, the comments bar on YouTube. So pop your questions in there, and then the ladies will take the questions at the end of their presentation. This webinar is brought to you by Synesthesia. It is powered by Bluetooth, and everybody have a great webinar.
Thanks, Lucy. $10 million. That's the number of people in the U.S. who lost their jobs just within a 2-week period this year. The result is a flood of new people all in the job market at the same time. However, businesses are also reducing the number of open positions to better cope with the economic hardships brought on by the pandemic.
And for you, this means more competition for the available jobs. So what can you do to stand out? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm Annyce Davis, or Brown Girl Dev on Twitter. I work as an engineering director for Meetup. Part of my primary job responsibility is the recruiting and hiring of engineers.
And I'm Wesnie. I've been an Android developer for 3 years. I'm currently at iHeartRadio helping to improve their music application. And trust me, I know a lot about the job search journey.
And together, we're going to walk through each of the primary stages of the hiring funnel. We'll share the goal, best practices, and tips for how you can stand out, starting with your resume.
Then we'll talk about the recruiter phone screen,
the hiring manager phone screen,
the tech phone screen,
and finally, the Onsite.
To help make this more practical, we're going to look at a fictitious job posting for a mid-level Android engineer. Now, I'm not going to read this word for word, but here's a quick highlight of the overview and a close-up of the requirements. We'll see just how the job posting plays a large role in how you structure your resume and conversation. So let's get into it. This posting is for Star Electric, and as you can see, they're looking for a mid-level engineer with familiarity with the newest technologies, and that they've also had technical experience as well as experience working with others.
The resume review is the first stage of the funnel. Typically, for a mid-level engineering position, you may have to compete with over 200 other applicants. Now, the goal of this stage is to market yourself and get an interview. You can successfully market yourself by making sure you include relevant projects and work history. You document the technologies and libraries that you're familiar with, and you keep it succinct and metrics focused. Let's look at an example. Here we have the resume of Mary Jones. We'll look at each of these 3 sections, the objective, the skills, and the experience, to see how we can help Mary to stand out. Starting with the objective. I would like to work full-time as an Android developer. Now, this objective tells the reviewer nothing about Mary that isn't already obvious. Of course, you want to work full-time as an Android developer. You applied for the position. We can do much better. Here's a much better version. Dedicated and experienced Android developer with proven success in developing high-quality user experiences, seeking an opportunity to use my knowledge to collaborate closely with design and backend teams on a meaningful product. Let's highlight why this works. First of all, you're including the fact that you're experienced. Then in the job requirements, it specifically mentioned that they were looking for someone who could collaborate with design and backend. Check, check. Next, the skills section. It's just a long list of expert at this and expert at that. First of all, it goes without saying that you shouldn't lie on your resume. If you're applying for a mid-level position, it's unlikely that you're an expert at everything already. What's more, it puts you in an awkward situation when it comes time to verify your employment, or even worse, you get the job and you're not able to do the work. So stick with the facts. This is a much better format. It leaves out the proficiency level that will be uncovered as you move throughout the funnel. Second, it's much easier to scan and see that the main job requirements have been met. And third, it takes up less space on the page, so you can use that space for more important things like your work experience. And speaking of experience, here's what we have from Mary so far: improving test coverage, transforming the app, implementing new features. It's pretty boring, and it certainly wouldn't stand out to a reviewer. We need to give more. One of the best ways to structure the bullets in your job experience is to use this formula. I accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. Let's see an example. Contributed to transforming our app into a multi-module app. Instead, transformed our Android application into a multi-module app by introducing dynamic feature modules, which lowered our build times by 35%. Much better. When you formulate your bullets, make sure you use words that have power and grab the reader's attention, like sustained, coordinated, orchestrated, acquired, spearheaded. All of these words will really help your resume to stand out. Now, we've updated Mary's resume to include the tips that we've shared. We even added in her GitHub handle and her LinkedIn URL. This resume is sure to stand out and make it to the next stage of the funnel. So for you, make sure you cover the requirements in the posting. Use action verbs and metrics, and include links to GitHub and published apps. This way, you'll be well on your way to the next stage.
The next phase is the recruiter's phone screen. It's the initial impression you'll have on the company, and it's important to know how to navigate this first step. The goal of this phase is to show the recruiter that you share the same values and will be a good fit for the company. Before having this interview, it's best to do your research on the company and think about potential questions to ask. You'll also want to make sure you show sincere interest and let the recruiter know about your desired salary. Some examples of research to do during this stage is to look at websites like Glassdoor to see what it's like to work there. It's also best to Google the latest company news and see info on your interviewee. That way, you have lots of things to talk about and questions to ask during the interview about the company as a whole. Look, it doesn't help anyone for you not to provide your desired salary. The recruiter is looking for someone that meets their range, and you don't want to waste your time looking for a job that's below your expectations. Here's an example of a website that I use to check the range of Android opportunities in my area, and it's called levels.fyi. If you're not sure where to look for information about salaries for your role and location, consider checking out this website. You'll also want to show sincere interest in the company. You can do that by having your story, which is a prepared story of you, but don't sound rehearsed of why you admire the company. You can use something like this. From a very young age, I have always had a keen interest in music. I have always enjoyed listening to different genres of music, and I have always taken the role of becoming the car DJ for road trips. And music is a big part of my everyday life, which is why I chose to work at iHeartRadio, to have an inside look at how music is shared to the mass population. Some points to help you stand out to the recruiter are to make sure you've done your research and that you have an interest in the company. You'll want to make sure that you're up to date with the latest technologies, since you'll be questioned on this during this round. It's also important that you're serious about moving forward. The recruiter that interviews you is often working with a specific timeline. Sometimes they'll only have about 2 to 3 weeks to fill that position, which is why it's important not to waste your time or theirs. Be ready. And you'll also want to demonstrate intellectual curiosity. Talk about a time where you've introduced a new technology to your team that had an impact on results. Show that you're a fast learner who could easily grow at the company. An example could be, I initiated working with MVI because I felt that it would be a good software architecture to implement into our code base since it was a mess before. I decided to create a sample project and show it to my manager during our one-on-one and eventually to my teammates. My teammates were impressed by the simplicity of using MVI and decided that we would migrate the code base. That helped us to simplify our code base and improve our productivity.
Thanks for sharing that, Wesnie. Next up is the hiring manager phone screen. Now, this is kind of my favorite part of the process where I get to know a bit more about the person and see also if they're a good fit for the company and vice versa. As the interviewee, you want to start building a relationship at this point. Whether it's fair or not, we hire people that we like and who can do the job. So, establishing a relationship with the hiring manager is important as often they're the final decision maker. You can do this by doing the following: be prepared for the tell me about yourself, demonstrate that you can do the job, and effectively tell your story. Let's look into each of these in a bit closer detail. Tell me about yourself. It's not the time to just read through your resume. Likely the hiring manager has already done that. Tell me about yourself is the same as convince me what it is about you that makes you the person for the job. It's your personal elevator pitch. You have about 1 to 2 minutes to give an explanation of how you benefit the team and the organization. It's your chance to sell yourself. As an example, here's my personal elevator pitch. I'm a detail oriented, impact focused leader. I thrive in challenging environments and I bring clarity to the ambiguous. I love to share what I learn with others. I use my ability to break complicated things down into smaller pieces and help elevate people, not only internal to my company, but externally. Now, with just a few sentences, I've unveiled what it is that I bring to an organization. You would want to spend time thinking about what is it that you can personally bring to benefit a team and an organization. I also mentioned that you want to be able to tell your story. This is your chance to go beyond just being likable. You need to demonstrate that you can do the job. For this, you'll want to have an example for each of the items in the job requirements. This is where the hiring manager is looking to check the boxes and move you forward. As an example, if the hiring manager says, tell me about your project while you were at ABC Studios, you could say, I converted the app from Java to Kotlin. Okay. Or you could say, oh, yes, ABC Studios. That was a great experience for me. That was the year that Google officially announced that Kotlin was a first class language. I had the opportunity to convert our app from Java to Kotlin. In fact, we were running on both phones and watches at that time. Notice the difference. It's more conversational and it addresses more of the items in the job requirements. Now, with the basics out of the way, if you really want to stand out, you'll need to do the following. Download the app or at least check it out on the App Store before your interview. It doesn't look very professional when you show up and you've never even tried out the product. Look up the person on LinkedIn, find some common ground that you can talk to them about. And if you don't have any questions, it comes across as if you're not really interested in the job. So come prepared with questions. Here's a sampling of a few questions I personally ask when I'm interviewing. What's the ideal candidate like for this job? Describe your leadership style. What would be my day-to-day responsibilities, and so forth. You can learn a lot and at the same time, show that you're interested in the company.
This phase is where we get a chance to show our skill set to someone from the team that you'll be hired for. It usually comes with a challenge in order to gauge your skill set and give employers an idea of how you would perform on a given task. The goal of this round is to highlight your technical skills and demonstrate how you would perform on the job. You'll either be given an algorithm to solve, a take-home coding challenge, or a live coding session. For either one, you'll need to prepare so that it's easier to get through the roadblocks. To prepare, you'll have to do research on the latest technologies and put them into practice. Also, be ready to discuss your prior projects and work experience. You must also have questions ready to show your interest. My process when preparing websites on guidance and the latest technologies. I use what I learned to then work on small projects using those technologies. The latest technologies that I've researched are things like Jetpack components, Swift UI, coroutines, Work Manager, View models, and Room. For my last interview, I was tasked with learning about coroutines, and I had to work on a coding challenge to show my skills. Here's an example of one website I used as part of my research for the coding challenge. You can use any website with official documentation to implement a coding challenge. For algorithm questions, preparing will involve using websites such as LeetCode and HackerRank to practice your problem-solving skills. As a heads up, many companies will have you add a new feature to their application as part of the challenge, so it's a good idea to make sure you have used their product. When interviewing for iHeart, for example, I was asked to design a system for organizing songs into a library. For the tech phone screen, it is very important that you're able to discuss your solution. This gives the person interviewing you an idea of your thought process, and it allows them to see how you would work through a problem. To stand out in this phase, you must be able to discuss your solution and thought process. If you're able to get through the solution before the interview time is up, they will most likely have you solve a harder question, or they might ask you to add tests, clean the code up a little bit, or enhance the UI. You must also be prepared for questions that you might not know the answer to. And instead of saying, I don't know, you could say something like, I don't have much experience with the given technology, but I do know so-and-so about the technology. That way you're still answering the question and demonstrating your skill set.
Now, these days, you may be doing an on-site virtually. So we wanted to share some tips that can assist you in this new form of interviewing. The goal of this phase is to land the job, right? How can you do that? You want to tailor your response to the interviewer's role, be personable but professional, prepare in advance for any technical exercises. Let's take a look at these in a bit more detail. But first, did you know that for over 20% of people interviewed in this survey, they make a hiring decision within the first 1 to 5 minutes of talking to someone? Since that's the case, you really need to make the most of this time and get started off right. One of the best things you can do is tailor your response to the interviewer's role. As you've seen so far, the recruiter has a slightly different goal than the hiring manager, which also differs slightly from the engineer in the tech screen. You want to be able to demonstrate to all of them that you're a good fit, because they're going to come back together and share their takeaways on your interview. And if you're having the on-site virtually, be professional. Make sure your video background is not busy and distracting. Still dress appropriately, at least up top. You want to show that you're taking this process seriously. And finally, make sure you're prepared for any final technical exercises that you may have to participate in. Often there are whiteboarding exercises or even peering on a tech problem with an engineer on the team. Ask in advance what the entire on-site process will entail so that you're not surprised the day of and you can be more confident about this process. Now, how can you stand out? Make it a conversation. Ask and answer questions. People are looking for someone that they can work with on a day-to-day basis. Try to think about 3 main situations from your work history that you can apply to a variety of circumstances. This will allow you to provide supporting evidence whenever you're asked questions about your expertise in a particular area. Also, keep it positive. If someone says, "Why are you looking?" the best answer is, "Because I'm looking for new opportunities and challenges." Never bash your current job or previous one. Also, don't harp on the perks. Asking about commuter reimbursement very first time during the interview is a bad look. Wait until you have an offer.
But what if you've been in the industry a while and you're looking for a senior level or management type position? Then you'll have to approach things slightly different. You'll want to think more about the behavioral aspects of the interview and then make sure that you communicate them effectively. For many of you here on the call, I know that English is not your first language. Does that mean that you're out of the running? Of course not. Instead, you'll want to use the STAR method to address the behavioral questions, like, tell me about a time when, or what's your greatest weakness, etc. And you can do this by preparing in advance. Let's use this example. Tell me about a time when you've made a mistake. Brainstorm a few examples of particular scenarios in your previous job and think about how to discuss that scenario using the STAR framework. To answer this question, we'll use this example. I accidentally overwrote my coworker's code the day before a release. We can use the statement as the situation. Your task would be that you had to get your coworker's changes back. The action that you took could be that you stayed up late and took a series of get steps to retrieve your coworker's work. And the result would be that you retrieved your coworker's work. So your response would be something like this. There was a time when I overwrote my coworker's changes when we were working on the same branch. Since the release was the next day, I had to act fast and get the branch back to how it was. I then decided to stay up throughout the night to fix this. Doing this allowed me to get the branch fixed in time for the release.
And that's it. We've gone through each stage of the hiring funnel. We really hope that you learned at least one thing that will help improve your next job search experience. When you put these techniques into practice, you can look forward to getting hired. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think now we're going to take a few questions. Let's see.
Oh, hello. Is everything been going? Okay. Sorry, always a bad timing. Ladies, apologies. Thank you
No
very
problem.
much. Thank you very much. I think that was just a potential employer calling me. Sorry, always a bad time. Thank you very much for your presentation. Let's take a check to see if there's any questions for you immediately.
Okay.
I don't see anything in the chat bar at the moment on YouTube. But that's probably because everyone's thinking about their interview questions, let's be honest. You have set them a lot of tasks in the last 30-minute period. You guys have looked at this topic before, like you said at the beginning, you've both worked on this a lot in the past. Wesnie, you said it with quite some experience. What are the questions that people normally do ask you? What's your most common follow-up question?
I think, let's see, what do people ask a lot? People ask, let's see, what is a common question? I'm trying to think back to the last time we gave this presentation. I think some people were feeling discouraged. So they were applying to a lot of jobs and they weren't getting past the resume phase. And they're kind of wondering well, what am I doing wrong? Why is it that I don't even get past that phase?
Yeah.
And for those people, I really just recommend focusing on those tips that we shared in the resume section, making sure you don't have extremely long resumes, that you're filling it up, wasting space with useless information. Keep in mind, especially if the more junior position you're applying for, we may see hundreds of resumes coming in for that position. So it's a very quick scan to see, like, does this thing meet the requirements? Okay, next. No, 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 no. Yes, 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 yes. So you want to make sure that you're optimizing the space on your resume and that you're kind of checking all the boxes in the job requirements in order to move on to the next phase.
Okay, that's good. That's good. On the resume point, one of the things that I have heard and I have noticed myself as well is, with there being more automation in the recruitment process now, there's more AI being used to filter resumes, for example, and other processes. Do you have any specific tips or guidelines, like to get past the bot, basically?
I would say to look for like the latest technologies that is being used in the industry, and do like have a little practice, like make a small project with that, and then you can add that to your resume, and that could be like a talking point for the interview.
Okay. But if you have the feeling that you're sending your resume to a large organization, okay, and that actually the first filter is being done by a machine, okay, like, a scan, how do you apply the same tips and methodologies that you guys talked about, or do you do something different?
I usually put the latest technologies, and then I'll also put the latest projects that I've worked on, and I'll have like a quick summary, and then like at the bottom is where I'd have my work experience. Okay.
And then you still want to make sure that you're using words similar to what they used in the job posting.
Okay.
For each job you're applying for, you may have to slightly tailor your resume. You want to use the same words that they're using in the job posting. Okay. And if you happen to download their app or check out their product in advance, and you can do a little bit of investigation, maybe you sense, okay, they must be using this library or that library, and I'm familiar with those things too, then you can include that in some of your work experience. For example, I might say, ported our app from Java to Kotlin using Retrofit, Room, and Work Manager, because I determined that their app was using those same 3 libraries. So that might be some technology that a hiring manager or recruiter is looking for from someone applying for the position.
Okay. So it still comes back to tailoring your resume for the different applications, for the different employers that you're looking at.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. I do have one other question, actually.
Yeah.
I'm doing one-on-one. Do you have particular advice on getting the balance right between the amount of unpaid or very low paid work experience that one does versus when you decide that's it, right? Like, I've done my apprenticeship time, and now it's time for payroll, because anyway, yes, that's the question.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, if you're new to the industry, I would still fight to be paid something, like versus doing it for free, even if it's like minimal. And then if you're transitioning careers, that's another time where you may have to accept the minimal amount. But I personally don't believe that you should work for free. Yeah. In either way. So that's something that I'm against. I know that some industries do have that, where you have to like work for free to prove yourself and things like that. But as much as possible, I would even just try to get the minimum.
Yeah.
And then transition over, and someone will know your worth within 1 to 3 months. So I would try to structure it that way. Even if I have to work 1 month for free, then by month 2, I maybe would request the minimum, and by month 3, I would request more. So maybe I would try a staggered approach if I absolutely had to work for free for some period of time.
Okay. I like that. I like the idea of going in with a strategy of how that's going to scale. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. Very helpful.
Great.
Did you want to add anything to that, Wesnie? Sorry.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree that you shouldn't stay unpaid for too long. And if you are, try to gain as much knowledge as possible, so that you're ready for the next role, the next step.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, payment in a different non-monetary way, isn't it? Good. Okay. Well, that I found that very helpful. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Ladies, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and your attention and everything that you shared today. We really enjoyed having you as part of our Droidcon webinar today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lucy.
Our next webinar will be next Tuesday at 11 a.m. So anybody that's joining us next week, look forward to seeing you then. For now, goodbye.